Thanks, Robert. Okay, members, we're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 24/0054/PP. Change of use and direction of structures for the operation of an animal shelter at land east of West Clanfin Farm, Waterside by Comrake, 104 Hill Street, Kilmarnock, Scotland, KA3 1JL. Members, again, we do have a hearing for this application, and again, I'll propose 5 minutes for the objectors and 15 minutes for the applicant, if we're okay. Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item, the first part of the hearing, I'm going to ask Fiona Findlay to take us through the application.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This proposal is for the change of use of the agricultural land to form an animal sanctuary on land to the northeast of Waterside, north of Fenwick. The proposal includes the setting out of internal roads, subdivision of the field, siting of various temporary structures for accommodation pods, clubhouse, classrooms and shelters for the animals. In total, there are proposed to be 27 structures placed within the site. The proposed layout for the site can be seen on page 6 of the papers, and I'll show you on the screens in a little second or two, with the storage container based accommodation pods and clubhouse also detailed on page 24 and 25. Members have had the opportunity to attend a site visit this week to review the application site. A summary of all points made in letters of representation in both terms of both objection and support are outlined at paragraphs 26 to 28, starting on page 20 of your papers. So, passing on to slides. Bear with me. Okay, here we have the application site marked up here in dark red. You can see the A719 road here to the sort of easterly direction, the junction of the Amlaird Road with the waterworks, etc. down here. And you can see how the site leads up the private access road to meet the application site up here. And you can see the residential property of Clanfin there. You can also see how the A719 obviously members goes to meet the A71, and you can see the detail of Fenwick, and you can see the detail of the M77. This plan is actually in 2 parts, members, just to show you the extent of the application site along the road, and just to show you the junction in a little bit more detail here at Amlaird, at the waterworks and the cottage, and obviously just to show you further up the site, members, where the property is in relation to the property at Clanfin. Here we have the application site, members, and I appreciate a lot of this is in quite small text. It is in your papers, but I'll just run through the different components for you if you just give me a second or so. So here we have the access into the site up here with the car parking area. Here you have the animal sheds and pens, isolation areas in here. You have the rooster pen and isolation areas in here. You can see the internal access roads, etc. through the site. Here is the area for the community garden, and I think it's referred to in the papers, the land take area of the community garden in relation to the main area of the sanctuary up there, members, as well. You have down here the composting and recycling area. Over to the south, sorry, of the community garden, you have the pods and you have the proposed clubhouse, which is the U shape there. As you come back up the road, members, you have the classrooms and the educational and the office facility as well. And you have some small animal pens here as well, members, in this sort of triangular area around here. We've just given you a couple of details, members, a couple of the buildings. We've not put an awful lot of the slides up. The main buildings are actually referred to in your papers as well. We have the clubhouse here, members. You can see the facilities provided, such as the kitchen, the breakout room, WC facilities, bathroom facilities. You have the accommodation pods here, members. You can see the layout and the design of them there. We've put up one of the animal shelters for you, members. You can see the detail of the animal shelter there. Again, members, this is just the Local Development Plan 2 map for you, which shows that the site is within the rural protection area, and that's one that I put up there for you as standard. We've got some photos to the site. We've put a couple of extra photos up, members, just to show you the open aspect of the site. You were obviously on site or had the opportunity to go earlier in the week. I do have the case officer here for any questions relative to the application site as well, but just to show you the open nature of the site. Again, the open nature of the site looking across the countryside. This is just to show you, members, the access road, the narrowness of it, and obviously you can see the condition of it there. All of that's referred to in your report. nearest residential property members as you approach the site. This is just the access from the A719 members, which we felt was appropriate to show you. This is obviously looking as you're standing at the access towards the junction of the A719 with the A77. And this is it the other way, looking towards Galston. Now that's the last photographs that I have, members. I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute or two. And if anybody wants to see anything else, please just let me know. The Planning Scotland Act requires that planning decisions be made in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The development plan, as per your report, comprises the adopted East Ayrshire Local Plan 2024, which is known as LDP2, and the National Planning Framework 4, known as NPF4. The primary issues in the assessment of the application are listed, paragraph 34 on page 31, and include issues such as the principle of development, the viability of the operations, design and landscape impact, amongst other issues listed. In terms of the principle of the development, and as noted in detail within the report in front of you, the development does not present an economically sustainable proposal. There are significant gaps in the applicant's business plan and supporting information that raise substantial questions and doubt about the income and funding of the proposal moving forward, as well as the lack of inclusion of some expected costs. The proposal as presented is not considered to be viable and is therefore contrary to policy IND2 of the LDP and policy 29 of the NPF4, and there are significant uncertainties. Paragraph 37 also notes that the land take for the sanctuary is less than the community garden element, and it's also unclear where the focus will be for the operations. The consultation response from the Economic Development Business Development Unit at paragraph 25 is particularly significant, and the applicant has been given the opportunity to respond to the comments raised, but there remain concerns that the supporting information does not adequately address the points raised concerning the viability of the venture. The project's dependency on grants and fundraising and the low level of income to be generated from actual trading, with the absence of guarantees from funders, is a continuing problem at the present time. The introduction of 27 structures of varying sizes, all of a temporary nature, along with the formation of hard standing tracks throughout the site, there is also a concern that this will detrimentally affect the open and undeveloped character of the site. The site is in an isolated location and does not integrate into the local service network. Proposal does not comply with the 6 qualities of place set out in policy DES 1 and policy 14, and is also contrary to policy NE1 of LDP2 and policy 29 of NPF4, as the proposal is not of a suitable size and scale for the surrounding rural landscape. The continued lack of clarity surrounding the principle and viability of the development also raises questions about the use of the accommodation pods and whether this would be the principal use and income generator. The lack of details surrounding this aspect of the development means that the proposal is contrary to policy Tier 2. The resultant use of the accommodation pods and clubhouse could also lead to a rise in noise levels, particularly in the evening, which could impact upon the amenity of the nearest residential property and other properties in the vicinity. The introduction of the non-residential use is considered to adversely affect the established character and amenity of existing properties, and the proposal is therefore contrary to policy Res 3. We have had no objections to the application from consultees, with the exception of the Business Development Unit, who has raised the significant questions about the viability of the proposal as presented within your report. Their comments can be seen in paragraphs 25 and 40 to 45 of the report. There has been a significant number of representations received in relation to the application. We have 23 objections and 95 support letters of support. However, the objections are from the local community, while the supportive comments are largely from out with East Ayrshire. The objections have raised valid planning issues with the application that would support the refusal of the application, such as the lack of detail in relation to the business operations, the unsustainable location in terms of accessibility, temporary design of the development, negative landscape impacts, and the potential for amenity impacts on existing properties, and these have greater weight in the determination of the application than the letters of support. For the reasons set out on page 41 of the papers, it is recommended that the Planning Committee refuse the application. Thank you, members, and back to yourself, Chair.
Thanks, Fiona. Members, moving on to part 2, the hearing procedure. We're going to hear from the objectors. So I'm going to call up first. It's Mr. Andrew Welsh, if you'd like to come up to the table. Yep, who would you like to go first? No, I call up Greta Robertson, please. Thank you. It's 5 minutes.
Nearly good afternoon now. I'm Greta Roberts. I live just down the road in Waterside and know this area very well. My objections cover, firstly, the farm road. I'm afraid you're going to hear about roads and access again. And secondly, material and environmental risks if and when such a charitable venture fails. One, the farm road. ARA had no objections regarding access onto the A719 here. They just recommended interdivisible passing places. If you've been brave enough to venture right up the track, this is clearly impossible and unworkable. I understand that development on a private access farm road is 6 houses maximum. Now, about the 6-house limit, I raised this last year with ARA's Ben Garrick, when at last in Waterside we got slow down illuminated signs installed. Mr. Garrick replied, usually for a greenfield site, we'd apply a 6-house limit. That ultimately, that it depends on whether the road can be designed to adoptable standards. End of quote. I forwarded this to Aidan Porter, who was then considering development of a chalet at the road end, and you'd see on the sight lines north there was a wall, and that's where the chalet has been built. Section 4 of the planning report states that there are only 4 residential properties and a chalet here. There are 6 already, and I'm just going to list them because you couldn't see very well from the plan. There's no pointer visible. Firstly, from the A719, there's Amlaird, then there's the new farmhouse and the barns, then further up 2 more homes at West Llanfin, possibly 3 there, as one had planning consent on appeal. So, excuse me, some years ago to convert its barn. Last but not least is Windy Hill, which you may have missed that. That's up east beyond the application site. There's a gate and it's up on the moor. Not forgetting that this road is also used by Scottish Water to access Amlaird Waterworks and the filters. So my question is, and we're not allowed to ask questions, so would further development trigger the requirement to have the road made up to adoptable standards? And is this possible when it's actually farm gate entrances and you would see how the road is built up on either side? Regarding accessibility, a 31-minute walk to Waterside, Mrs. Young will cover this. There are no footpaths at all. There are no footpaths at all on roads outside Waterside village, even going to Fenwick up to the road end, and we've no services in the village. Finally, the risk if such a venture failed. Firstly, question of site clearance and reinstatement. And this is particular of local concern and local knowledge. There's an existing local precedent of abandonment of such a venture to local sites with historic clear links to Comrie, which you perhaps hadn't seen. B, the risk of dumping unwanted animals, even at the road end. That used to be a very common occurrence around here at Glasgow Fair, people getting rid of cats and dogs and things before their holidays. But I can imagine if someone was taking some animal up to the sanctuary, they would get halfway up and think, I don't know where I'm going, I'm lost. I'll just go and deal with this elsewhere. Finally, Comrie is a good idea. And I was impressed by their sort of publicity and pre-application discussion, unlike clearly at the last application. But utopia is not to be found up on the Ayrshire Moors near Whiteley. Thank you very much.
Mr. Roberts, any members, any questions? No. Thank you very much. Mr. Belshire, are you want to come up now? Okay, thank you. It's just whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. I'm here representing the objectors of concerned local farmers and residents. Our first concern is the track that consists of 200 metres of tarmac at the beginning and then 640 metres of gravel tracked road owned by my father and continues with a further 420 metres of gravel track owned by Mr. S. Doonan. On their title deeds, it gives access for dwellings and agricultural use only. The concerns is this track is designed for light use and has an average width of 2.7 metres. I have a wealth of knowledge as I carry out a lot of the maintenance work on this track, and I also use it to carry out work in the fields. So I know this track needs to be treated with the best of care and with respect. It does not like heavy traffic when wet, and we're in Ayrshire and it's wet most of the time. With this proposed plan, there is a significant amount of hardcore for the car park, the roads, and the pod bases to be transported. There will be transported of thousands of tonnes to complete this, along with other materials that could cause severe damage to the track, with commercial vehicles with a width of up to 2.5 metres, thus putting all their weight on the shoulders of the road, pushing the road into the soft verges. At the moment, the only traffic that uses this track are residents to access their houses and limited farming traffic. The residents have tried to get postal and refuge and recycling services to come to their house, but both services say the road is not suitable for their vehicles, and the collection point should be kept at the bottom of the track. East Ayrshire have visited the site with a refuge lorry on the 16th of March 2024 by the request of the residents of Windy Hill Farm, one of the dwellings on the track. The results of this is it's unsuitable for collection vehicles and the collection point should remain at the bottom of the track. I have the letter here from Malcolm Ray if anybody would like to see it. The track maintenance is carried out throughout the year and all users of the track contribute financially. To this date, the charity have not made any contributions. My second point is biosecurity. This is a serious concern for the farming neighbours, especially for me and my family that have the track running through one of our yards, housing over 100 cattle. Diseases can be transmitted by people, animals very easily by the sanctuary, as they do not have the same movement restrictions as what agriculture has. For example, scab in sheep is a very nasty disease, and by law we have to do our best to treat and reduce this horrible disease. And if neighbours have this disease transferred onto their animals, it could end up with the costly treatments and even the destruction of their herds. The outcome is the same for TB, BVD, Jonies, and as members are aware of foot and mouth and the destruction that this can cause to agricultural businesses. My family and I have been speaking with Red Tractor, National Farmers Union Scotland and the Department of Agriculture. And to comply with regulations, as this is a private road, a physical barrier will need to be put in place. This is, i.e. a lock gate at each end of the yard. So all users of the track will need to open and close the lock gates on entry and leaving the farmyard, and any unauthorised personnel will need to report to the farm office before passing through. This will be a big inconvenience to daily users of the road and potentially slow down any emergency services that need to pass through. My third point is for 2 residents at East and West Clanfin.
Mr. Welsh, can I just ask you, just to kind of try and sum it up at this point in time?
Yep, no problem. At East and West Clanfin that have concerns with light and noise pollution and security to their properties. Greta has already touched on what would happen if funds run out, going by their economic report. If the funds run out and when it all goes wrong, what happens to the land? Because we have noticed there's a deterioration in the land since the charity has had it. So thank you, members, for listening to our objections. And ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to consider the impact of this proposal, not just on myself, my family, and the neighbours who live there and the impact it will have on their daily lives. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Welsh. I don't think we can take any additional information. Craig, is that right? Yep. So, members, get any questions at this point? Yep. Thanks very much, Mr. Welsh. This is Stephanie Young. Yeah. Sorry.
A bit sorry. Should know better. Sorry. Right. 2 fatalities over a 10-year period. And then last year, there was a fatality of a motorcyclist approaching the junction from the A77. And if you noticed, going towards the A77, there's a blind summit. So a vehicle was pulling out slowly and turning right. Motorcyclist came up. His motorbike was strewn far and wide. Ayrshire Road Alliance, we believe, have now looked at the placement of road signage regarding the blind summit and the hidden entrance. But I feel this is too little too late, especially for the motorcyclist and his young family. In our objections, we asked that the committee should do a site visit. Did this happen? Or was it deemed too dangerous? It did happen, good. As Greta said, there's no way that people can access the site unless it's by vehicle of some description, because there's no pavements or anything else. I would like to ask about the proposed catering facilities for this site, how the volunteers, and more importantly, the animals are going to be fed, watered. There again, more deliveries going up. Transportation of substance for both aspects has not been addressed at all. Finally, we would question the management of sanitation at the site, both water supply and waste management for humans and animals, as it doesn't seem well thought out, compliant with SEPA requirements, nor properly researched with Scottish Water. Financially, the Economic Development Report has shot this application out of the water, and in our opinion, justifiably so. When I, like a lot of my fellow objectors, first heard about this charity, we thought it was a great idea, but it has to be financially viable, practically sustainable, and respectful of neighbours, not just a big-hearted idea. Comrie trustees have had historic involvement with other animal charities, with mixed success, I am led to believe. The local area has had experience of at least one other horse charity, which was poorly managed and haphazard and resulted in calls from residents to the SSPCA. The initial planning report and recent update has to be applauded for the in-depth consultation it has produced, with particular reference to viability. It does not, however, look too clearly at local need in terms of similar facilities and other leisure outlets. We have a brilliant, well-established animal sanctuary at Hessel Head. We also have Meikle Westland Farm in New Cumnock, offering dark sky watching and animal therapy with their rescue animals. Adjacent to Waterside Village, we have the Arran View Fishery and Cafe. Close by is Cowan's Law, both facilities offering leisure amenities and accommodation. And we also have Sunnyside Nursery right nearby. Finally, the application refers proudly to plans for a community garden. We already have one in Primrose Bank in the middle of the village, space left in trust to the village and maintained by the community association for the benefits of all residents and visitors. We have a great, strong community association that holds regular events for all ages of our residents, and most of these take place in our village hall, which yet again is in the village with safe access and proper parking facilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to consider the viability of this proposal and the impact it would have when you reach your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Young. Members, any questions? No. Thank you very much. Members, we're now moving on to part of procedure where we hear from the applicant or his agent. So I'm going to ask, I think there's three of you coming up. It's Mr. Colin Hastie, Conor Watt and Shelby McWilliam. So Mr. Watt, you've got 15 minutes whenever you're ready to start. Thanks.
Well, hello. My name is Connor, and to my right is Shelby, my vice chair, and we'll have Colony here, who is the architect who unfortunately did this on a fixed rate. I'm so sorry about all this. I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak about Cumric. It has been my dream for the last 10 years or so I may be a bit nervous as I talk. During my last tour in Afghanistan with the Marines, I knew that I wanted to work with animals and people in some way. And for the last 4 years, I've had the honor of being the chairperson of this charity. To see it get this far is amazing, so truly thank you. I'd like to clear up a few misconceptions if I can. Cumric is a huge idea, and I think somewhat what we're trying to do has been misunderstood. We are an agricultural animal sanctuary trying to build on agricultural land. We are not a business. We are not applying for volunteer accommodation because we want to be a tourism destination. We just understand that we have to increase our volunteer force as we grow, and it will attract volunteers from all over the UK. We are not looking to grow beyond our means. We will take many years to build this charity slowly and to ensure we do it correctly. We have been a registered charity for about 4 years now and own the land we are applying on. We have a social media presence in the millions who want to support us, and we have relied on only 2 funding campaigns this entire time, yet have always stayed in the green. We are in a much better position than I believe any charity has been when starting, other than those that have been started by the very rich people that you see on TV, I think. Sorry, one second. Lost my space there. I know a major concern is our financial viability, but even with our current inability to apply for funding and grants due to no funder being willing to give a charity without planning consent in place, we believe the actions have shown that we are responsible and able. As I said before, this process will be slow. Even if we had all the money in the world, we would still take years to build to ensure that we have the capacity to take on the work. For the first few years, we will only need a few volunteers a week, which we will drive up with us. And as we grow, we have shown in our plans to buy a transport vehicle to shuttle volunteers ourselves. reducing the amount of use on the road to practically eliminating any inconvenience to the neighbors. If we work with groups like we did with the Duke of Edinburgh Award, letting kids with learning difficulties come up and assist us in planting 1,000 trees, those will be done in controlled times and either shuttled in by us or the organizers. Other projects we've done, such as working with the job center in town and buying courses and laptops for people who are looking for employment, will not require on-site visits. I cannot promise we will not use the road at all, but we hope the good we're doing will excuse not leaving a road empty. It is stated in our policies that no one will be left alone on the property to ensure no disruptions is caused, but luckily, people who travel up to volunteer usually do so because they want to help, not cause issues. We are planning to take in agricultural animals. Our application shows housing for sheep, pigs, chickens, roosters, and smaller animals such as guinea pigs, because those are a personal favorite of mine. I get that one, sorry about that. These animals need space, and we have the space to provide them. We chose this location because it's agricultural land, which has been abandoned for many years. It is also because we have learned from the mistakes of other charities, and being too close to the main city can be harmful to the animals. The volunteer accommodation pods will let people come from afar and volunteer for multiple days, and our willingness to shuttle will make us accessible to the community without putting us in the middle of town, all while not negatively impacting the lives of around us. I've lived in Kilmarnock for a couple years now, if you can't tell by my accent, but I have learned that this is a town that can use the opportunities. Kilmarnock is a place that will provide employment skills, animal welfare training, work experience, volunteer opportunities, community, and most importantly, acts as a mental health resource. We are an animal sanctuary at our core, but our name translates to sanctuary, a sanctuary for all. We state in our business plan that we will not use the animals any way other than the atmosphere that they provide, which has been proven to improve mental and physical health. We believe that we'll add a benefit to the people of this community if given the chance. And the community has also shown an interest in us. We received more than 1,300 responses to our volunteer survey of people wanting to be involved. And we all know how hard it is to get anyone to fill out a survey, let alone 1,300 people. This is almost as impressive as the 90 people who voiced their support for us in the planning application. People do not like to fill online documents. This was all from us sharing 2 posts online. In fact, the 2 times we have done any funding campaign, it has been blown away from the amount that we originally aimed for. With our first try, we tried to raise 80 quid and we raised £1,800. On our second attempt, we raised £2,400. We've also engaged with companies and brands which have pledged to support us and have been doing so for the last few years. And we have already reached out to key funders to ensure that they would, in principle, support a charity like ours. Having face-to-face meetings with representatives from organizations like that from the Renewable Fund. We've also laid out the funding that we'd go after for the next 5 years to achieve our goals. We understand that funding isn't always guaranteed, which is probably the cause of the concern for our viability, but there is also no future that is financially guaranteed. We will face this issue by working within our means and starting off small and only growing when stable enough to do so and in a responsible manner. We have no plans to run before we can walk. We hope that the limited ability to get funds so far doesn't hinder our application due to no funders being willing to fund a charity without planning consent, but rather our ability to sustain ourselves even without them is seen in a positive light. We've also, sorry, didn't know, I thought I turned it off there for a second, my apologies. We have also shown with our meetings with our neighbors who we have been in contact with since August of 2023, we are willing to be flexible. I assume every person in this room knows how scary it is to sit across from a room of angry people, but that was the first thing we tried to do. Due to the concerns, we have changed our policy, site design, how we operate, and even dropped projects we were excited to run due to their needs. Once we realized how big of a concern the roads was for them, we sourced a vehicle and the potential funding for the vehicle so we could be close to the public. We'd also be happy to make concessions here as well in an approval notice. The designs of the buildings, landscape, site layout, the parking numbers, all of which we'd be happy to revise and work with the planning department if should the change of use be approved. Please, pretty please. I'll also kind of touch on a few things that the neighbors have brought up, if that's okay. They have mentioned that we used to work for an animal sanctuary. I did work for an animal sanctuary in 2019 when I was in university, but once finding out that they were abusing an employee, I resigned, took that employee with me. They got on their feet and started doing amazing things. And now they're working with me, and we're having a really good time. Another thing is the community garden as well. Our original idea was to have, when we were open to the public, to have that a place where people can garden. Now we're going to use that space to grow food to donate to local food banks. I have a big packet of things here, so it might take me a second here. For the noise, air, and light pollution, on-site security, page 3. Thank you. You see why I brought these people with me. It's a much needed help. Our neighbors have previously informed us that they had no concerns really regarding noise from the roosters. Initially, the roosters were located further away from the house. However, following a meeting with the neighbors in August 2023, we adjusted the design to better suit their requests. We consulted the nearest neighbors about the matter, and they expressed no objections and confirmed they did not mind the noise from the animals. That noise like that were to be expected. Adequate lighting is required from the policy DES1 and EALDP2. We are happy to work with the planning department and the neighbors to determine what level of lighting is required and possibly. There should be minimum activity on the site after 10 p.m. Currently, no noises. We have full intentions to ensure quiet and the nature of the countryside is kept. I don't think I'll be able to get through all the complaints, but if anyone does have any questions on these, we do have them written out and we can answer them to the best of our ability there. We believe this is the right area for an animal sanctuary to work with the advance of community development, education, animal welfare, and environmental protection while working to reduce poverty. These are our charitable aims. And while we may be a small operation, we believe that every little bit helps build a bigger and better community for us all. And we hope you agree. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. At this point, I ask any elected members if they've got any questions for you. Yep. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Watt. We heard from one of the objectors that the access track is not a public access road. I believe it was in ownership with two individuals. That's what it was stated. Have you had any discussion with the landowners about using the access track?
Yeah, definitely. So since we own the property, we do have the right to use the track itself. And we've also realized through their needs that traffic is not a good idea, which is why we've closed ourselves to the public. And the only person using those tracks would be us or people invited by us through our own shuttle service through the minibus that we were looking to buy, which is a small vehicle that can hold about 16 people, I believe, or our personal vehicle as well. I believe we do have a right to use the road, but I'm more than happy to work with anyone on the times which would best suit them. Sorry if that answered your question. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Councillor McGee.
So in paragraph 39 of the report states that the proposal was presented is not considered to be viable. How would you answer that?
Yeah, definitely. It's very hard to show a project to be viable when the funding itself for a charity, not a business, is so determined on the funders themselves. We've tried to show that we are viable due to the volunteer accommodation bringing in income, which is something that not a lot of charities do. We also have from our donation campaigns, which we have limited due to not having planning consent. We didn't want to ask for money from people and then not be able to progress on those things there. I think the same question to any charity is, how are you viable before you start? And I think we're in a good position to be viable. And also we have laid out for the next 5 years what funding we'll go after and to chase the programs we want to kind of go after there. Shelby, do you have anything you want to add to that? Colin? Sorry, does that answer your question? Thank you so much.
Anybody else got any questions? No. Yep. Councillor Kyle.
Chair, can I ask it's strictly charity that's run, so you're looking for donations all the time. How many people are you going to employ?
So right now, the major of the work is carried out by the trustees. We have plans to employ one person within the next 5 to 10 years. Like I said, we are keeping this a very small operation because we'd like to make sure that we can maintain the workload, and that will be a property manager. Everything else will be carried out by either volunteers that are staying in the accommodations or from the local community that are coming up through the transport system that we're setting up through the pods, or sorry, through the vehicle. In the future, if the need arises and the work is more than we can handle, and we're able to get funding for it, we can employ more people if necessary as well.
The other thing I was going to ask you is, I see you've got a list of the animals you're going to be having. You can go to Dumfries Estate and see the same animals.
Definitely. So I think
in a bigger enclosure. An example is the 3 wee pigs. One of their pens is made with straw, one's made with wood, and one's made with stone. You've got the ducks. You've got all these different things. You've got animals at the top of the range through the Prince's Trust. So what makes you different from these places? Are you just going to have ordinary pigs, ordinary sheep?
Definitely. So we're working with the agricultural system. So animals that would otherwise be put down to their non-viability with the farmers themselves. There are less than, I believe, 5 animal sanctuaries that work with agricultural animals, all within Scotland, and there are over 22 million agricultural animals in Scotland. It's not so much what makes us different, but the need, and I think we are helping to relieve a need. And also trying to use that to better the lives of the people in our community as well through the education, the work experience, and just the mental health benefits as well. I don't believe there's another animal sanctuary like this. Hillhead was brought up. They are a wildlife sanctuary and they're also close to the public. And I believe they're what, a 30-minute drive? I don't drive. I'm sorry, I don't know how far away they are.
I see here your objectors are mostly from other places. They're no local.
Do you mean the objectors or the people asking, the supporters?
Your supporters, sorry, your supporters are from other areas, not within East Ayrshire. From abroad, I take it.
So we put out a story asking people if they can take a look at the application, if they had anything they want to say or if they support it. We were able to get 90 people from that. We did a survey later on that we did submit to the planners, and I don't know if they've included as well, where we had 1,300 responses, which 400 of them, I believe, were from Scotland. Some locally, but in the Scottish area, it's hard to kind of ask people exactly where they live. But we hope that kind of shows that there is support for this in the local area as well as abroad, which supports our idea of the volunteer accommodations while being viable, of people wanting to come and stay and work and help us.
CM Del's online. Oh, Councillor Cowan.
Thank you. Chair. Just another quick follow-up. So I can see from the papers in front of us that the council's economic development service have had, some input into your business and operating plan. Have you had any further discussions with them about how you could enhance and grow the business and get some additional support from other areas, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you so much. We've been working with Silk 7, which is a consultancy agency that works with many charities in Scotland, and they have been absolutely amazing. I'm very aware that our first business plan and financial projections were done by us, and we are not professionals. We're not big developers. We're people with a big-hearted dream. But we were able to take their feedback, go find consultants, and we're going to continue working with them to develop our business plan, develop our financial projections. And like I said, we're not looking to run before we can walk. At no point will we try to do anything before we have planning secured for it, or funding. But yeah, if anyone here also knows how to work these things better, please, we're always here for taking on advice and mentorship.
I don't think there's any further questions, so thanks very much, Mr. Watts, Hasty and Williams. Yep, fine. You were well within your time. Fine. Okay, at this point, members, I'm going to close the hearing procedure and hand over to Fiona to kind of go through the summary of what we heard during the hearing.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a great amount to come back with. Mrs. Roberts did raise some ARA matters and roads matters. I'll maybe defer to Barry as the expert in terms of access issues and the junction details. What I would say is, if you just bear with me, generally, just to point out that the maintenance, obviously, of the private access would be a legal matter between relevant owners. Biosecurity would come under the control of, or the authority of the trading standards with animal welfare. I have noticed that in terms of light, noise, etc., there were comments made about that. Obviously, matters can be addressed if there was under conditions, if there was an approval. At the moment, obviously, you don't have an approval recommendation in front of you, members. Mrs. Young did query the site visit. Just to clarify, as I said in my presentation, members were invited to a site visit and members did attend a site visit, and that was yesterday. No, Wednesday. Apologies. It was meant to be yesterday. It's changed. In terms of the access details, in terms of the sort of the accident record, I'll maybe leave that to Barry, if that's okay, Barry, to come in there. Obviously, members, there were questions there relative to the comments from economic development. Economic Development have provided quite a strong response, which is within our report members, that the proposal at the present time isn't viable. I'm aware that the applicant did suggest about making changes to the proposal. That would need to come through a separate application if they wanted to improve their development, improve their proposal, etc. Should they wish to come back into us, depending what members' decision obviously is today. Other than that, to be honest, members, I don't have a great deal to come back on, but obviously happy to answer questions if there's anything that members wish clarified. Maybe over to Barry, if that's okay. Barry, if
Yep, just to confirm, our Development Control Officer has obviously visited the site and assessed the junction, and he's taken cognizance of the minimal additional traffic volumes that potentially generated by the development, and he's concluded that the existing junction is it's acceptable in its current form. So there was no grounds on which ARA could justify any sort of objection to the proposal.
Thanks, Barry. Members, it's open to yourselves for questions, comment. No. Councillor Lennox.
No, I just think it's got to be said that the work that these volunteers are doing is to be commended. That's the reality. They're only, I think they're only trying to do their best in that sense. So I think it just needs to be said that their work is really. I'm impressed with the work that they're trying.
Councillor Cowan.
Just really picking up from Councillor Lennox there, I think my questions around the interaction with economic development is perhaps out with the planning committee remit, but I was really just getting to how some further dialogue could be there and what other support officers from other department areas could provide to maybe enhance the operating plan and the business plan that exists at the moment.
we can pass those details on to the applicant should they wish to make contact with economic development, depending what member's decision is today, obviously.
Thank you, Fiona.
But I don't think there's any further comment and questions. You ready to move to determination? Okay, well, page 23, the application's up for refusal. Is there anyone else otherwise minded? No, I think it's kind of unanimous decision that the application's refused as per the recommendations in page 23. Just want to record that, Cheryl.
Yeah, so just for the purpose of the minute to do yesterday, the application's been refused.
Thanks, members. That concludes this, I was going to say this morning's business, but it's gone into the afternoon now. So thank you very much.